So it seems that there's been some problems over at Offkai Expo. Now, if you don't know, Offkai is a VTuber convention, which is arguably one of the biggest conventions for solely VTubers. Obviously, there's a lot of conventions out there that do like anime-based things or gaming, and they have like a couple of VTubers attend. But I feel like this is one of the main VTuber conventions that a lot of people go to, and it's something that I see a lot of people bring up in the VTuber community of something that they're going to attend. Now, this is actually coming up in a couple of days' time. It's about a week or so until the actual launch of the event, and it's in San Jose, California. And yeah, they've got a ton of guests over there. I mean, there's some really popular VTubers attending from different kind of agencies and also indie, which is really nice to see. We've got V4Mirai, for example, like Rem. I like Rem, obviously, for the British purposes. You know, we keep going. You know, there's so many, you know, hololive. There's a lot of hololive VTubers going as well. I mean, Globy. Again, there's a lot of VTubers going, and even though they won't all load, we got FaZe Connect, we got Amelie, we got Project Melody, you know, Kuro, all from VShojo, which again is, you know, there's some big VTubers. It's not like a small event or anything, you know, whatsoever. So again, it's good to see that there is an event like this going on. We got Snuffy, dokibird, Katy Cat, you know, Cottontail. Again, so many people, even Kiznai, you know, the original VTuber. So again, very cool. But there's a big problem going on with the Offkai Expo at the moment, and people aren't happy with it. This is the post that came out. As you can see, it's got 958,000 views and only 1.2 thousand likes. Now, if you know Twitter, that's bad. That's very bad. And obviously, they go on to say, attention, meet and greet attendees for Offkai Gen 4. We are requiring a verification check of a government-issued ID during queue. Please make sure you bring one before waiting to meet your Oshi, or you won't be able to attend the meet and greet. Now, this is only for meet and greets, and this isn't for, you know, the actual event itself, I don't think. But it is kind of concerning for a lot of people, especially if you consider things going on in the US right now. And obviously, this was posted on June 10th, a couple of, you know, literally a week or so before. And I think that's one of the things that mainly people are mad about is, you know, people saying, can you guys disclose this sooner than a week away from the con? Why is this necessary? And yeah, that's definitely true. There should have been a disclaimer held out, you know, to at the very beginning, whenever all of these meet and greet stuff kind of went on, which obviously, you know, would have been much better for a lot of the guests attending, because then they can make up their mind on whether they wanted to bring their ID or not, and potentially, you know, have some problems. Because as I said, you got to consider what is going on in the US at the moment with a lot of the kind of deportations and things. People are now starting to make jokes, for example, like Kiyoshi here, who reposted this saying, I got deported at my Oshi's meet and greet, which is kind of crazy. And obviously, yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, there's a very big chance that maybe, you know, you could get jumped by ICE and just deported because you brought your ID with you to this event. And obviously, lots of people are very scared, even if it's a completely irrational kind of fear. And, you know, there's no chance that ICE is going to be attending a VTuber convention, you know. It's still a big concern for a lot of people in the country at the moment in, you know, regards to carrying their ID on them and having themselves identified to these people. So again, it's going to be a really big problem for a lot of people, because people are just worried, they're scared, and, you know, it's very valid. You know, it's a very valid reason why they would be scared of that happening. You know, people, for example, like Rosie Belmu saying, I think it would have been good to give people a bigger heads up on this, and also to make sure that people know credentials of people working at the con, know that this info is being shared with people who are safe to give it to, which is, yeah, especially true. Obviously, yeah, they made a whole page as well talking about the meet and greets and, you know, what you need to do. They got a general lottery info, which started on May 30th, which is obviously, that's whenever it opened up for some of the lotteries to actually do the meet and greets, which is a long time ago. And only now is that, you know, is the point where they say, oh yeah, by the way, you need to bring your ID, which could be a big kind of no-no for a lot of people. And it's fine if that was disclosed whenever the kind of lottery was going on and they first signed up and they, you know, kind of signed up to it knowing that. But the fact is that they didn't, and that they told them a little bit later, like, oh yeah, by the way, you need to bring your ID, which, you know, might not be a big deal for some people, but as I said, with a lot of these situations going on in America at the moment, it's one of these things that people are not very comfortable with bringing to a convention like this. Saying, here's my question, why would I give you my ID? That God knows what your staff or volunteers are going to do with it, especially when the meet and greet really just amounts to the interacting with a VTuber via video chat through some platforms like Discord. And obviously I can definitely see a reason why they would do this, but obviously, as I said, they should have done it earlier on. I could see the reason, being that, they want to keep people safe. They want to identify people before they go and talk to a pretty popular person. So then if something was to happen, then they've seen that ID and they, know who they are. But again, people saying, is this to keep it 18 plus or is it to prevent the harassment of VTubers? There are only reasons I could see, the requirement being needed, which again is true. Obviously, I've talked about the harassment of VTubers at conventions recently, especially with the IML stuff of her getting harassed by this one person who was trying to ask them some really weird questions. And for some reason, they just didn't take the mic off them, which was so weird. So again, maybe it was something to kind of avoid something like that happening to some of these VTubers, or it could be something completely different. To say, feels like something y'all could have announced months ago, before all meet and greets with entry is not needed. Why before meet and greets? Yeah, so again, it was also a little bit weird at the fact that you didn't need it for the entry of the convention, but only for the meet and greet in specific. So again, it's very, very weird. People saying, I didn't know I was going voting. Y'all need my social security number too then, which again is absolutely crazy. And yeah, this is the main picture that I saw whenever I found out about the situation. I was like, what does this even mean? And then I, went through a little thread and looked at it, and people were saying like, yeah, US Immigrations and Custom Enforcement present Offkai Expo Gen 4, which is crazy, saying, remember, always call your local ICE department. So we should stop paying our taxes. Got it. I already got my 3-day pass, planes, and ticket, hotel, and a rental car. I'm in too deep at this point. That goes without saying, to be honest. I smell a future YouTube series in the making. I suspect that this would happen if my Oshi ever had a meet and greet. He said, if I light myself on fire, ice can't touch me, which is kind of crazy. Said I'd buy it, which again, it's kind of crazy that, people even bring this up as a concern at a VTuber convention. It's supposed to be a place that is, obviously a fun time for people to attend to and go to and do all things to do with VTubers there. But instead people are now worrying about the fact that they got to carry ID and potentially just get taken to the, the harsh streets of Guatemala or something like that, which is kind of crazy, and it doesn't really matter what you think on the ICE stuff, whether you think, people should be deported or whether they shouldn't be deported. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, people are still worried about what will happen at these kind of events and, what will happen if they were to bring the ID to this kind of stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot of people at this event that are going to be no-shows and, maybe booked a slot or whatever for a meet and greet and probably will not be turning up due to the fact that this being announced so late. So it's going to be really, interesting to see whether some of the lines are a little bit empty due to that fact, or if there's going to be a lot of people filling it in and that it really wasn't that very many people that were complaining about it. But again, really not a good choice from Offkai there. They should have definitely kind of explained this from the get-go rather than telling them a little bit later on. People said like, papers please, say sure, I just need staff to show me theirs and also understand that I'm flying from another country to see my Oshi. Because again, yeah, that also could be an issue. There's people from all over different countries attending this event to see, these VTubers. Obviously, as I said, this is a very, very big kind of thing going on. And, if someone could see a passport or whatever from a different country that they are visiting from and then assume that they are staying here illegally or whatever, and then, potentially find themselves in a pretty tricky situation whenever they boot them out of the country. So again, we're going to have to see if anybody else does speak up on this fact, but I thought it was very interesting, especially seeing as this is one of the biggest VTuber kind of events that goes on, especially over in America. So yeah, if there is anything that goes on, I'll keep you guys up to date. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you think that, it was fine of them to be checking IDs and meet and greets like this, and it was fine of them to be doing this, a little bit later on? I don't think it is. It should have been disclosed from the get-go, as I said, but, I want to know what you guys think about this. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also, go to GameSubs, use my code Kaza, get 10% off, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.